You mentioned the survey. January 7th, TAR is hosting a open house information session with the RTA here at 6 p.m. But talk to us a little bit more about how the feedback that's being received or will be received will be incorporated into the plan.
So the process that led up to this, we had the Citizens Advisory Committee, which worked for 5+ years on trying to get a plan together. They came forward with a couple plans. Those have been modified. So we've been modifying it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the opportunity for us to go back and go, okay, what did the community tell us what they want? And then it's up to the members of the RTA. It's the members of the Transportation Board, which I'm serving as a representative of ADOT and the only non-elected. The rest of them are all the municipalities or the tribal chamber. And there's going to be a lot of opportunity. It's going to be interesting going forward.
Mm-hmm.
South Tucson has a new mayor.
Mm-hmm.
John Post is the new mayor in Marana, placing Ed Honey. He's got big shoes to fill, to say the least. And so the makeup of the board's changing a little bit. And so it's going to be real important to have a clear message from the community of what they want.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's going to be up to some of us who are focused on getting this to the voters. We'd like to get it to the voters November of 25. We have to get it to the voters and passed no later than May of 26. We'd like to take 2 opportunities, but Maricopa ran into a whole bunch of problems getting theirs to the ballot. Now they have to do it a little differently than we did.
Mm-hmm.
And they got it through with about 62% of the vote with 1 shot. It was literally, if they missed, they were going to be in trouble. And it would have crippled the transit system in Phoenix, because they've got a much larger percentage that goes to that than we do. But I'll tell you, ours, if it doesn't pass, I don't know if I'd use the word cripple, but it will severely impact the transit, and it will ensure that the road improvements and the roads we deserve to have won't occur. They're just not going to occur.
$2.5 billion is a lot of money. You mentioned some of the internal committees at RTA, but accountability, transparency, the projects that are approved, not being moved around, dollars shifted. Talk about that process.
That's a great point, because it's something that we are currently in the process of developing right now, and that is the administrative code. So what you see right now, there's the list of all the projects and all the money in the draft projects and the funds, and which municipality or the county, who will be responsible for getting that done and where it's happening.
And also the mix of funds.
Right,
what each source
is.
There's
5 different categories, to include transit, to include wildlife. There's money in there for wildlife projects to ensure that the new roads or the expansion of roads don't result in more threats to some of the wildlife that, as we all know, goes throughout this entire county.
And is such an important part of our community.
Right, and the multimodal and safety enhancements, signaling, and there's so much that's covered.
Very comprehensive.
That's very covered in this. But to your point, Sean, most of that will list in the administrative code, which everybody will have access to. It won't be on the ballot. You'll see this on the ballot, whatever the final list of we have to buy project to name what it is. We have to buy on the ballot, have to show where the money, different categories that the money is going to go to. But the administrative code's where it's going to make it happen. I talked about we're using the conservative estimate, but we've also already outlined the plan for what if we hit that 50% mark. So that above the $2.45 billion, there's another $320 million that we've already allocated of what it's going to go to. And the city of Tucson took a lot of that risk. So they're getting about half the money up front, collect about 65% of the money, but they're getting about half up front. But they'll increase the amount that they get if we hit that 50% number instead of 0. But what if we exceed 50%? Then there's even more that can happen. But most important lesson we learned is we have to be efficient and effective, which wasn't always the case in RTA 1, of getting the roads completed. Some of it falls on the municipalities. They're responsible for, actually, RTA doesn't build a single road. It's not, we don't manage them. We turn them over to the professionals inside the municipalities. So there's some things in there that I think will help. We had delays on some projects that make projects come in over cost. So we're trying to put in something. One is that if money is allocated to a project and it can't be executed within 6 months, either we move it to another project or RTA can come in and help manage it and push it and get it done.
So
that's
making
one
them
way.
more, or time sensitivity, or even a level of urgency.
In the infrastructure, as with almost everything in life, every delay you've got is probably going to cost you money, not just in time, but also prices are going up. And we saw that that's really what's hurt us the worst since coming out of COVID. The prices, and I can tell you from contract approvals at the state transportation board, they skyrocketed. They've leveled off. They may even be coming back down, but they just took off.
And so then it compounds.
Creates more problems. So
Right.
getting the projects done on time in their period is going to be important. So we're putting some safeguards in place. The other thing is this is a 20-year plan. We got some great projects on that list. Are we going to need it in 15 years? We don't know.
Because
So-
they are broken down into 5-year increments,
Yes,
correct?
so period 1, period 2, period 3, and period 4, 5-year increments, and that's when they're supposed to start getting their funding. Because it's all about, remember, the funding, sales tax comes in over time. We've got some funding available that will let us bond for a couple of the first projects when we haven't collected enough money to really get them started yet, versus having to collect all the money and then make it happen. But we're trying to put in there, how often can we review both the revenues? So if we are coming in above that pessimistic view, we don't want to sit on that money. We want to get it put in place. How are we going to do that? Are we going to have a list of pre-approved projects? So these are the ones prioritized that we're going to go to. Don't know yet. Is it going to be a 5-year review? I think it's important at the 5-year point. Some people say 10, some people say 5. That we take a look and go, here's the projects in the next phase. Are they still what the community wants or what the community needs? Some of the projects, like First Avenue, it was originally going to be 6 lanes. Now it's approved to be 4. One of the things is we were also expected to be 1.3 million citizens at the end of RTA 1. We're at 1.1. So our growth hasn't occurred. So all the traffic experts said with improvements of turn lanes and right turn lanes at the intersections, it could accomplish the same goals that originally were set out by the 6-lane plan. But instead of making that a fight to get those things changed, and Broadway going to 6 lanes instead of 8 was a fight. I was on the opposite side that lost up because they were going to have bus rapid transit on that. And that was a big thing that people, but a lot of people when they were fighting to downsize it didn't realize that's what they were giving up. But if we put a process in place where we can take a periodic review and say, do these projects still make sense?
Correct.
And the roadway ones have to go to the voter. Now, if we change something about the roadways, we have to go back to the voter. So if we decide to cancel a project, move money to something else, or insert one of those projects from Vail, or we insert one in and take this one out, we have to go back to the voter. So it's not something we want to do every year or every 2 years.
Right.
So we'll see, but that will all be developed. It's part of the reason that I felt it was very important to get this thing moving to the citizens, because we spent so much time discussing this. We also spent so much time discussing how we're going to finish their RTA 1 projects, that we weren't making any progress. By getting this to this community for their input, we've kind of stopped talking about what's in it. We'll start talking about it again probably in March, but for now we need to do that other stuff. We need to
On the administrative
solidify
side.
the RTA 1 projects, and we need to do the administrative side of it so that we can put those safeguards, those assurities, those input from the community.
And the lessons learned,
Yes.
right? Because that's important.
Oh, if you don't debrief the previous plan, you're not going to improve the next. So you've got to talk about it.
And the factors that you couldn't have anticipated. 5 years ago, we couldn't have anticipated we would have had a global pandemic.
Correct.
And arguably that affected our population, our anticipated population growth, for example, right? Because remote work is now so much more part of the fabric of every community.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Because generally speaking, Arizona and Tucson is still a city that people move to, mostly from other states, right? Leaving other states.
Oh, no,
and
we are absolutely an in-migration state.
Right, we're
We
still growing.
get more than others. Yes, a lot of them come up from California, but you'd be surprised. Illinois is another one. A lot of people come from the Midwest. Well, you probably know that.
Yes.
In your business, you know that.
Right.
You know where people come. But I think Texas was the one state we were losing people to.
Texas or Florida
and
is generally who we lose to.
And it's just, we're gonna continue to grow. And so for the people who say, oh, we don't need any more growth, well, it doesn't, people are coming.
Right.
This is a beautiful place to live. We all live here for a reason. We're not going anywhere. And so there's gonna be more people coming. But what I wanted, you spark something in my mind. Things happen in a 20-year period that you can't anticipate. Nobody saw the pandemic and the impact it had. But back in 2008, when the economic recession hit hard, if it wasn't for the RTA, a lot of the companies that continue to work on our infrastructure and road would have gone out of business. Why? Because we had money. We had some bonding capacity. We could keep them in business. And oh, by the way, guess what? They were willing to work for cheap that time because they just wanted to keep their employees.
Sure.
They didn't have the business. There wasn't the investment coming.
Right.
But the RTA, because it was a 20-year plan,
projects were still
in
on
line.
the books.
We actually kept a large segment of that industry going.
Which is another important industry for us in economic development.
Absolutely.
Can't be ignored.
If you live in Arizona, is such a large state, and the part a lot of us in this region don't understand. We complain about our roads. You get out on some of the state highways and some of the rural areas. You're going. I feel terrible because we only have enough money in our preservation. 74% of the state funding. This goes back to why regional funding is important.
Right.
74% of the state funds that we have for infrastructure go to preservation of our current highway systems, both federal highways, because that's where a lot of the money comes from, and the state highway systems. And then it goes to the non-state routes that we're responsible for. There's not any money. We're not going to have manna from heaven coming down and letting us do anything.
There is no magic wand.
It's got to be this way, and it's got to be big picture, and that's why I'm such an
and long term.
And it's why I'm such an advocate for regional investment. But the RTA, through the economic downturn, yes, it hurt us on our revenues, but it's helped us keep the industry going. And that industry is incredibly important in the state of Arizona, both locally and in our region, but also throughout the state. And the cost of there's so much work. The cost of getting people to do stuff in the rural or the more difficult places to get to continues to skyrocket because it's labor costs, and labor means employment, means jobs. So it all plays into it. And I'm really concerned if the RTA doesn't get